interrupt our regular program schedule to bring you the following special report from ABC News. New challenge in space. From Houston, here is correspondent Lynn Scher.
Good morning. For almost an hour now, 2 astronauts have been outside of Challenger, floating around in space. And just about 2 minutes ago, Bruce McCandless put on the jet backpack, and he is now flying free. We have TV pictures. There you see on the left-hand side of your screen, Bruce McCandless flying around in his jet backpack. He said, as he put it on, in a reference to Neil Armstrong when he went to the moon, he said it might have been one small step for Neil, but it's a heck of a big leap for me. And there he is. Let's listen in to their conversations with the ground. Well, we just lost picture for a minute. We'll probably get that back momentarily. In the meantime, here in Houston, watching with me, my colleague, Jules Bergman from ABC, Gene Cernan, and Jim Bajan, a shuttle astronaut. Gentlemen, is this what we've all been waiting to see?
Lynn, today will be an historic day in space. It's the day when man finally became his own spacecraft.
We've really cut the cord here, so to speak, Lynn. What we're looking at right now, that big mass in the center of the picture is Bruce McCandless. He's facing to the left. He is in the maneuvering unit. He's also within the confines. There we are looking at a camera with the black sky behind him.
Right through the helmet to his face.
-4, I'm getting a little bit of a positive roll.
He's still within the confines of the payload bay, free in space, checking out the controllability of the maneuvering unit.
Keep in mind, he is flying himself. He is not tethered to the spacecraft. He is maneuvering that backpack. You'll get a better shot of it when they widen out a little bit.
As soon as he's satisfied that the system works to his satisfaction, he will then translate away from the shuttle, the first time 150 feet, and then up to 300 feet.
24 tiny nitrogen jets are powering him.
This man has been working on this for 17 years. It's about time he got a chance.
I have a feeling for that giant leap he took. I can understand his enthusiasm.
That's Bob Stewart in the background. He is still tethered to the Challenger, and he will get his chance on the MMU in about an hour and a half or so when Bruce comes back in.
Bruce, maybe you want to fly up and down a bit. Yeah,
See,
that's what I was thinking. Let me drive on back to the starting of the PAMs and see what they look like.
They are now coming up between Hawaii and the West Coast. In darkness, they will be in sunrise in about 5 or 6 minutes, and that's the time at which Bruce should be ready to leave the confines of the payload bay.
You can see on the top of his backpack there a flashing light, and that light is actually a position light like you'd see on an aircraft, just so they can spot him more readily when he maneuvers away from the vehicle. There's also 2 on the bottom, just so...
It's really a running light.
Exactly.
I don't expect there's much other traffic up there, though, Jim.
Well, there are those Martians, Gene.
Be careful, Jules.
I always am.
That is, of course, a 300 and some pound backpack here on Earth. Up there, it doesn't weigh a thing.
You can see how, not to get technical, but how Mr. Newton's laws, the laws of Newton, react in zero gravity. And people talk about other experiments in the purity of a no-gravity environment. You can see how smoothly a 700-pound mass of man and machine can translate and rotate totally freedom.
He's, if you look closely, you'll see his left hand and his right hand are controlling the whole thing. That's the only place where the controls are on the backpack. As he goes by, a little bright spot there. He is making himself go forward, backwards, up, down, all those things just by fingertip control. They're sort of joysticks, almost like a video game. It's the same kind of control mechanism.
He has 60 feet to go, or almost 60 feet to go back and forth in a payload bay, and you can see how smooth. He does not want to get too fast, and I want to stress here, and I guess I can say this on the basis of experience, that the human sense that is most important to him now are his eyes, more so than feel or sound or anything else, touch. He really needs to see where he's going and where he's been. His environment inside the...
Cutting out flipping, we just get little bits of your conversation.
And he is heading now towards the end of the payload bay. This is the exercise to try it out, make sure everything's working properly. They'll turn around and come back. Well, we have lost video just temporarily. They are about to approach the coast of California, and when they do, there will be a little bit more video. Lots more picture, as a matter of fact, and we will come back and show you that. And Bruce McCandless flying around in space with his companion Bob Stewart, still hooked onto the Challenger. So our coverage of the Space Shuttle Challenger will continue in a moment. Well, we are here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston waiting to reacquire a television signal from Challenger while the two astronauts are out there, and Bruce McCandless is wearing his jet backpack, flying himself around the orbiter in the payload bay. And Gene Cernan, while we're waiting, perhaps we can explain the attitude of the orbiter and exactly how they're flying in relation to the Earth right now.
Well, actually, they're flying with the tail of the orbiter down towards the Earth, and the payload bay will be towards the movement of, or direction of travel, in this case towards the west coast of California, and they'll get the full brunt of the sunlight as the sun rises over the continent of North America. Now we have real live TV. We're looking back at the payload bay. I believe this camera probably is on the manipulator arm, on the remote arm, looking down into the bay. I don't see either one of the crewmen right now.
Well,
oh, there's Bruce coming out.
As far as com dropouts go, I haven't run into any yet.
He said his communications is good. He's still maneuvering within the payload bay. Remember, his colleague, Bob Stewart, is working and doing other tasks, but Bob is tethered. Bob is not in a maneuvering unit at this time.
I don't see any stars out here.
And we're seeing McCandless now with the floodlights on in the payload bay.
I think we'll see as soon as the sun rises, we'll see a beautiful bay lit up almost instantaneously as the sun comes up.
We're hoping, of course, for more, lots more angles of TV pictures. Apparently, they're having some slight problem in the orbiter, reconfiguring which cameras they're going to use. This is conversation about the cameras right now.
That's Bob Stewart.
He's commenting, I believe, on a foot restraint that he's going to use later on the end of the manipulator.
Yeah, he's working right.
This foot restraint too.
Jim?
He's working up at the CISA where they're going to take this T-pad, a thing that will be used on the Solar Max mission later. And
Well, maybe we better translate some of that. The CISA is the workstation, is that right?
Workstation up in the forward part of the payload bay. It's a toolbox.
And the T-pad is the kind of attachment pin so that they can stabilize the satellite.
Exactly right. And he's turning it.
Long-range translations. We'll try the recovery after we get out of ground site coverage for TV.
And here he comes back down the other direction in the payload bay.
Bruce had indicated, although it's nighttime.
Past Ed, what's it do? We sure have a nice flying machine here.
That's exactly what they've all said about Challenger
like
itself.
a real friendly machine, real solid, real stable, and looks like you did a good job with all that engineering work over those years, as well as Ed and the rest of the crew.
I got to admit, perhaps now more than in any other flight of the shuttle, I'm just a little bit envious.
I guess this is the machine that everybody wants to use.
Bruce McCandless and the manned maneuvering unit now gliding over the top of the shuttle pallet satellite.
They will use that shuttle pallet satellite, that boxcar-looking thing, on Thursday for some docking practice.
There's a convenient break point here.
And it will simulate the Solar Max, the satellite they have to repair.
Well, we have lost, we got it back again. Let's go back and look at that TV picture. There, the sun is starting to come up. You get beginning to get a better picture.
You'd see the sunlight on the wing now.
And 90% O2.
We ought to get a brilliant background.
Stars or somebody just started a water jump.
When the sun comes up, we should see a brilliant Earth, the coast of California being lit up, hopefully behind Bruce.
That's not going to be a bad way to watch sunrise for him.
50-foot translation from the orbiter in just a few minutes.
He's now going to leave Challenger. He's actually going to go away from the ship itself.
It's important that he does this very slowly. He's going to move away with his back to the Challenger, but as soon as he establishes...
And Mission Control is astronaut Jerry Ross.
As soon as he establishes a speed, which is very slow, away from the Challenger, he will turn around, do a 180-degree turn, so he can always see the Challenger as he moves back. Again, I say his judgment of distance is really his perception through his eyes. That's all he has to judge speed. There's no feel of speed, there's no feel of motion unless you are looking at something, even though you can see the Earth below you at passing at 17,000 miles an hour.
And of course they are carrying along what they're calling a rangefinder, which is basically a stick with some notches on it, which they will hold up when they get to a certain distance, and they'll see how large Challenger is on the stick, and that's how they know how far away they are.
This is a $10 million backpack. It's pretty sophisticated. Maybe we can find a better word than stick, but that's what it is. It's basically an ability to judge the size of the shuttle as he moves away.
There's those droplets that Bruce was talking about. You can see those little... On the top of Bruce's helmet there, that white device, that box, is a TV camera, which we'll see some shots from later, and we'll see his view of everything he sees.
Now, we see Bruce upside down here, but Bruce is only upside down or right side up in relation to his visual contact with the shuttle.
The first actual flight test of the manned maneuvering unit.
People say, well, do you feel like you're falling or you're upside down? And it really is only the manner in which he has respectful vision of the shuttle. If the shuttle's upside down...
Bob, can you give us a status check then? Yeah.
That's Bob Stewart, the other astronaut who is still tethered to Challenger. Talking now to ground control.
Should we have had a tether in here on Bruce, you would see it probably covering the entire TV screen.
6 hours, 83% power, 7% octane.
That's Bob Stewart giving some status reports on the machinery he's working on.
Yeah, a tether would be wound around in circles and bends. There's Bob at the top of the screen.
Power, say again, O2.
Well, we've lost picture for just a few minutes, and don't go away because there's lots more picture coming. And while we're waiting for that, Jim Bajan, let me ask you, is this what you expected it to look like? You've been around the astronaut office for a couple of years now and waiting for this?
Well, I don't know. I guess through all the simulations, we've expected it would look like that, but it sure looks a lot better actually seeing it happen.
It's very smooth.
Well, as Jim was pointing out, when you're weightless and you're not influenced by the normal things in vacuum, such as air resistance, things move very smoothly. The thrusters are very gentle, and it looks more like a scene from a science fiction movie, I think, than anything we're used to seeing here on Earth.
And there's no turbulence up there either.
Absolutely.
Because there's no air.
That would make a difference. But, Gene, this is very different from the backpack that you almost flew once.
Well, it is and it isn't, Lynn. The backpack that I flew had a different propulsion system, and it also contained the oxygen. They take their oxygen with them. I had to depend upon a backpack for the oxygen, but basically, I was going to do roughly the same thing, but I was going to carry that tether, and should I have had a failure, and I fired a thruster and went to the end of the tether, I literally could have got wound around and gone like a whip around the spacecraft, the Gemini spacecraft at that time, and again, I refer to the tether, could have been more of a problem than it was a safety line.
I think we have some more TV now. Let's go take another look at that. Back in space we are. That should be Bruce McCandless right in the center of your screen, and Bob Stewart in the upper left, still attached to Challenger.
They're both still in the payload bay.
If you can project yourself, we are all sitting on the end of that long manipulator arm looking down into the payload bay. We've got perhaps the best bird's eye view that anyone could ever imagine.
Bruce McCandless preparing to make his 150-foot sojourn, moving away from the orbiter.
Moving straight up.
Out to a distance of 150 feet and then returning. And then following that, about 10 minutes later, we'll go out to a distance of 300 feet.
What a moment. That's the Earth behind us, or in front of us, I should say. You can see the blackness of the sky in daytime.
You can see how much better it's lit now with the sunlight there. The whole bay is more filled in with light.
And he's going to directly pass the camera on the remote arm. The elbow camera, if I'm making that correctly.
Attention to you for a little while here while we back.
Ground control telling Bob Stewart they weren't going to talk to him, they're just going to watch Bruce. This is the first time any human has ever flown free from a spacecraft.
Look at that picture.
And from a young student studying physics, Bruce McCandless truly is a satellite right now. He's moving through space at 17,000 miles an hour, moving away from the shuttle at perhaps 1 or 2 feet per second.
And they're about 175 or so miles above the Earth right now. Crossing over the United States, I suppose somebody thinks if they go outside and look straight up. What do you think, Jim? We get a look at that or not?
I don't know. I think the sunlight's up now on most of the eastern part of the United States. They'll probably miss it.
Hey, this is Steve.
You bet it is, Bruce. You bet it is, my friend.
You understand?
He has got the world at his fingertips right now. But you know,
that may be from his helmet. I'm not sure if that's from his helmet TV camera, but it may be.
this is obviously a very spectacular bit of space exploration, but it truly has commercial impact for the future. Let's not overlook the impact.
McCandless, looking back at the orbiter as he slowly glides away from it.
Now he's moving very slowly. You'll see the orbiter slowly change size, but ever so slowly. The one thing you don't want to do is allow this machine, this maneuvering unit, to get too fast. Lynn, you've flown a simulator. You know that as well as anybody.
Well, in the simulator, if you fly it too fast, it knocks the simulator out right away, but they can reset it. Yeah, fingertip control is what they keep telling you. Fingertip control.
It's like flying. It is flying. It's the Cape.
On the stateside pass.
I gotta see if I can get a picture of this.
That means the helmet camera. Here it comes. He is now going to try. This is a new color version.
There is James Bond at it, you know.
Boy, oh boy.
This is incredible.
But for real.
It's for real.
No special effects or animation.
We have some helmet-mounted TV on this.
There's a case where you've really got
Roger, we
control
got a
of
little
your
bit
destiny.
earlier, Vance.
See the sun shining on one side and it's somewhat shadowed on the other.
Bob Stewart said he was going to be the world's smallest spacecraft when he does this.
We'll be able to see the whole ship. Right now we can see a corner of it.
Well, I don't see the corner. I just see Bruce and I see the Earth, and we are about to lose picture. And, of course, we're going to be getting more picture, as we always do in all of these things. Well, Bruce McCandless's line was a nice flying machine. He says it seems to have come through in good shape. Any surprises for you, Jules? You've been watching along with Bruce McCandless all these years while he developed
I've flown the air-bearing simulator right here at the Johnson Space Center, Lynn, so I knew roughly what it would do. I thought I knew roughly what it would do. The only thing I'd like to point out is that if he held both thrusters down, both translation controls down, he could get as fast as 40 miles an hour.
But it wouldn't last for long because he'd run out of fuel.
Not for long.
Okay. And also, Jim, he can come back and refuel. People keep asking how long will it last. It's only as long as the the spacesuit itself will last, which is about 7 hours, right?
6, 7 hours, that's correct. What'll happen is then he'll come back and recharge it. They use just compressed nitrogen in compressed bottles like a scuba diver would use, and they just repressurize it and do it again.
Okay, let's look at it again if we can. It's kind of like looking at the launch pictures over and over again. I'm not going to get tired of this. There's Bruce McCandless drifting, flying himself through space. He is controlling all of his motion.
Lynn, we might.
Back to live. Well, here's some more live.
There's Bruce McCandless, 80 feet away from the spacecraft.
He is on his way to a long trip away and coming back, 150 feet out and back.
Gratifying that it's working out.
He has little controls on this maneuvering unit, very much like a spacecraft would have. Look at that.
It really does not.
He is a spacecraft. He's a human spacecraft.
Well, that's the thing that they pointed out to me in the simulator, that you don't want to think that you are on something or something's on you. You're all one. You are a unit with the backpack when you're flying.
And in zero gravity, because there's no feel of weightlessness, and he weighs 700 Earth pounds, you get that feeling. You are one. You are an integral system, and all of a sudden you've added system to the human body. You've added capability to the human body to do things in a new environment.
700 pounds, we should point out, that's the spacesuit, the backpack, and the man.
Florida and
In the maneuvering unit.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I guess to break it, Robert is going to have to go 10% faster. I think I got enough Delta V.
Delta V, that's the amount of speed he gets.
I'm at about 95 feet right now.
When he gets to 300, he'll be a star.
Maybe right on 100.
So 85 feet away, on his way back.
We got you at 123 feet at about 0.3 feet per second.
That's Vance Brand, a commander, actually.
Right. We always seem to have about a 25-foot difference between what I read and what the simulator up at Martin with Lex Ray and all those guys came up with.
Jim, how is Vance Brand reading that distance?
They're going to use the radar, the actual tracking radar.
That's the KU band radar.
That's exactly right. So it's a very accurate method of telling both the speed and the range, which is what Vance is doing.
They are actually tracking Bruce in his backpack as if he were another spacecraft.
Exactly. It's exactly what's happening.
Challenger.
Go ahead, Challenger.
Why don't you go ahead and take the cameras, and I'm going to work the lasers on cameras B and C.
Copy. We'll take the other cameras. You've
Mr.
got
Specialist,
Baker and
Ron
Charlie.
McNair.
What they're talking about there is the F cameras have...
145 feet, Bruce, at, well, a little noisy, around 0.3 yet.
have laser rangefinders.
Come to a stop here. Yeah. Matter of
They
fact,
just zoomed into him. He's not moving in yet.
That's being controlled by the ground right
feet,
now.
so you probably better stop. Yeah, I should be just about stopped now.
I don't think he wanted to hear that. You probably better stop.
Bruce has absolutely no sense of being stopped, except again relative to the shuttle. When he says he stopped, remember he's still moving 17,000 miles an hour.
2.2, okay.
We're dealing with micro speeds among macro speeds. In other words, very little speed of the two, the man and the spacecraft compared to what they're traveling together.
Then I'll come on back
The person who said, Bruce, you better stop, was Vance Brand, the spacecraft commander, who also described to me how if the backpack failed, he can bring the spacecraft over and scoop them up.
Now, let me, from going back to...
Ability. It really is, and so far the only surprise is that, like I say, when I put on a plus X for a couple of seconds, I feel this sort of rumbling, rattling.
We're just listening to Bruce McCandless. We've lost our TV picture. He said the only problem so far is he feels a little rumbling or rattling.
Maybe he needs a tune-up.
That's wonderful. It really does seem to be performing beautifully.
Oh, it's absolutely beyond my own expectations. You imagine these things are going to work this way, but without that backpack, he would be tumbling and rolling really almost helplessly out there on the end of a tether. So this is so important to the future use of space.
Let's look at it again.
Okay.
Without the shot of mission control, well, there they are. There he is, out in space. Oh, that was a good 10 minutes ago. We get to look at all this good stuff again.
You get to see here also Bob Stewart on the left-hand side of your screen is working in the toolbox area there, so to speak.
You can see now how important backpacks are, independent manpower to our future in space. If we're ever going to do space station and things like that.
Well, those are the pictures so far. There are lots more to come. In the meantime, we are all watching eagerly, and nobody is probably watching more eagerly than Jim Van Hoften and George Nelson, who are sitting in mission control. They're going to use these backpacks in the next mission, that's in April, and going to do some real work and repair a satellite, should all go well. We will be back if there are more wonderful pictures to show you, and of course there will be a complete wrap-up of all the spacewalk and backpack activities this evening on ABC's World News Tonight. For my colleagues, Gene Cernan, Jules Bergman, Jim Bajan from NASA, good morning.
New challenge in space. Live coverage of man's first free flight in space has been a special events presentation of ABC News. We now resume our regular program schedule. After this, from our local station.
Jim, the Buck Rogers backpack.
Right.
Before Bob Stewart can don it and go out for his first tetherless ride.
They are right now over Hawaii and approaching the coast of California. They will be coming into sunrise, as you pointed out, Gene. They're in the darkness right now. What they're doing right now, of course, is some testing on that foot restraint that Jim Bajan mentioned, so that, again, this is all preparation for the big mission coming up in April, scheduled for April, when they will actually hook onto a satellite and bring it in for repair. They want to be sure. It's going to be like using a cherry picker, isn't that right, Jim? They'll have the foot restraint on the end of the remote arm, and they'll work on the satellite. They want to be sure, what, that nothing happens to jar the arm while they're working?
Well, several things. That's one, to make sure they don't overstress the arm, put too much force against the arm and cause it to be damaged. And the other is to make sure that they can control the arm finely enough to be able to put the crew member exactly where he needs to do the work. Just above the...
And we need to get you back to the MM unit. Okay. So, Bob, the configuration of the MMU is you're hooked up to System 1, you're flowing gas, the cross-street valves are open. So you're in the middle of a propellant recharge.
Okay, that's Bruce McCandless talking about the Manned Maneuvering Unit, or MMU, to his fellow astronaut Bob Stewart. Jim, what was that instruction he was giving him?
He was just telling Bob how he left the MMU, that it was being charged with nitrogen and getting ready to go again, telling him which system he was charging from so Bob would recognize as soon as he gets there and not waste time.
And nitrogen is what gives the backpack its propulsion.
Exactly right. It just expels compressed gas, which is nitrogen.
Just almost, you can imagine like a balloon filled with air, and if you let the air out very slowly or in spurts, that's the way this maneuvering unit works. It lets nitrogen out in spurts, which will propel the astronaut or stabilize them, turn them left or right.
Bob Stewart preparing to move over to his MMU and lock into that.
Bob's coming towards us right now.
You're going to need to hold that MFR in. Is going to be with the parallel to the longeron with the handles at the aft.
When Bruce McCandless used the MMU, or the backpack, this morning, it was extraordinarily smooth. I believe he said the only problem was in one of the rotational maneuvers, there was a little bit of rumbling, but apparently those hand controls, those 24 thrusters are working perfectly.
Well, and obviously did the job, because since we saw him last time at 150 feet, he had come back into the spacecraft and gone back out to 300 feet, obviously with no problems at all.
Lynn, and by our timeline, they'll spend most of this television pass just recharging the backpack. So we won't see any spectacular flying.
In your analogy of cherry picker just a minute ago, everybody, I think, has seen the arm. It's like it's a big, well, it's an arm. It's sort of like when they go up to the satellite, it's sort of like a telephone repairman standing in that little chair of his that goes up to the top of the telephone pole.
And this picture, of course, I believe is this still from the camera at the end of the arm, or is this
No, this one's from the forward one in the payload bay on the left-hand side, looking back. From the top, well, now Bob Stewart's in our way, but coming down from the top is the arm, and you just see you can't see it now, but...
Okay, the reason that Bob Stewart is in the way, obviously, is the camera that's shooting right now is exactly in the corner where the backpack is stowed, and in order to get into it, he's going to come on over and do just what Bruce did, which is back into it.
That's the part of the foot restraint now. It's hard to make out, but coming from the lower right-hand part of your screen in towards the middle, you can make out a yellow-like rectangle.
We're looking from above, aren't we, Jim?
Yeah, looking from the elbow
payload bay. We're looking from above. We were looking back down.
Now we're looking from the aft forward. In fact, you can see the window up at the top where the Vance brand is. But anyway, the arm's coming down from the top, and the movement that you see at the bottom of the thing the picture is Bruce McCandless getting into that foot restraint.
And this big tube-like device is the end of the arm we spoke about, where they will attach their work platform. There's two things that are going on.
Come on down. Let me trim it up a little bit.
Bruce is now going to guide Ron to link up and grab the foot restraint. That's what you hear a lot of talk
Challenger
between.
Houston, we're 15 seconds LOS Hawaii, Teeters in a couple minutes. Please configure for Teeters. And for your information, camera Delta is off. It was getting overheated.
Well, you've just heard they're about to lose signal this TV pass, and obviously there will be just, as usual, a couple minutes when there will be no television, right now being one of them, but they're going to, as soon as they cross over the California coast, or on their way there, they get a little bit more television. And keep in mind, by the way, that while these two guys are outside, McCandless and Stewart, Vance Brand and Hoot Gibson are flying the aircraft, the spacecraft, And Ron McNair is working the manipulator arm, which is all figuring in their rehearsal for that satellite repair next time around. In any event, don't go away, because we're going to have more television pictures in just a couple of minutes, and our coverage of this walk in the Space Shuttle Challenger will continue in a moment. We are almost 3 hours into this most historic of spacewalks, the first humans to fly free in space. Bruce McCandless has done it. Bob Stewart is about to do it with those jet backpacks that NASA has been counting on, and certainly takes a little bit of the pain away from the problems that this mission has had so far. We're looking at live television now, out in the payload bay.
Oh, look at the sunrise.
Look at the sunrise, he says. They are now crossing over the California coast.
There's Bruce looking over the edge.
He is tethered now. He is no longer flying free.
Okay, Bob, that takes you to MMU prep.
We're looking from the aft, or from the back end of the payload bay forward, and there again is that window with one of the inside astronauts looking out very enviously, I'm sure.
And of course, their only contact is visual and voice communication with the guys outside.
See, there's a tether while they're working on the inside before they put that maneuvering unit on, and that tether now is very important.
All right, we have seen these pictures now. We've seen pictures like this before, tethered astronauts. Even Gene Cernan did that. Let's take a look at some of the earlier pictures from today when Bruce McCandless was doing his historic Buck Rogers number. There he goes. First human ever to fly free from a spacecraft.
Rising straight up from the bottom of the cargo bay, Lynn.
And very slowly, very carefully. You know, a lot of people don't understand how he can move so slow and still be at that high speed around the orbit of the Earth, but it's just a relative motion thing. His home is a spacecraft.
And he is a spacecraft himself right now.
He is in orbit, effectively, alongside the space shuttle. He's a companion spacecraft, and they're in orbit together.
It's probably as close as we get to being birds at this point in our lives, huh?
You know, this is not animation. This is the real thing that we saw this morning.
It's about time.
Yeah.
He's moving, by the way, Gene, at 2 miles an hour.
He is in sunlight. He, at this time earlier this morning, was crossing the California coast. I'm sorry, he wasn't quite in sunlight at this time, because you can see his faceplate. He's just checking out the system. Now he's in sunlight. Just a little later in the morning, there's the Earth horizon below him.
And this, of course, was the end, or rather maybe even the beginning of Bruce McCandless's 17-year dream. He has been with NASA that long. He's been working on that jet backpack for almost as long, and he finally got the chance to fly it today. Obviously, he thought very long and very hard about what it was going to be like, and when he stepped into the void of space on his jet backpack with no tethers today, recalling Neil Armstrong's first step on the moon, he said, "It might have been one small step for Neil, but it's a heck of a big leap for me," and indeed for NASA and the entire space program. We will be back with more pictures of this historic day in space later today, and also on ABC's World News Tonight we'll have a complete wrap-up. And for all of my colleagues, Gene Cernan, Jules Bergman, and Jim Bajan, and all of us here at ABC News, we wish you a good morning.
New challenge in space. Live coverage of man's first free flight in space has been a special